A very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18 Global. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin have met for a rare summit on Wednesday. The two discussed military matters, the war in Ukraine and even possible Russian help for North Korea's satellite program. Now, Putin showed Kim around Russia's most advanced space rocket launch site in Russia's Far East after Kim arrived by train from North Korea. Kim asked numerous detailed questions about rockets as Putin showed him around Vostochny Cosmodrome. And when asked by Russian media if Russia would help Kim build these satellites, Putin said, "That's why we came here." Also, North Korea fired ballistic missiles into the Korean peninsula while the meeting was on. Here's more.
We have changed our interior and international policy. I would guess we are approaching the standards of North Korea. I can't evaluate that because I am not an expert in this area. But it's interesting. But Kim Jong-un, a very eccentric person, he draws attention. So maybe something good come out of this cooperation and partnership.
Of course it is interesting, a person coming here on an armored train. He'll communicate with us about something, learn something new. Sharing experience is great anyway, so I support this visit. To be honest, I don't expect any good out of it. I visited North Korea in 1992 as a sailor. We sailed from Vladivostok to North Korea. Things I saw there, they've had famine.
Well, we're watching this very, very closely. We'll see what the two sides say as a result of this. As I've said before, we continue to urge North Korea to meet its public commitments not to support Russia's war in Ukraine. No nation on the planet, nobody, should be helping Mr. Putin kill innocent Ukrainians. And if they decide to move forward with some sort of arms deal, well, obviously we'll take the measure of that, and we'll deal with it appropriately. As Jake Sullivan said last week, there will certainly be repercussions for North Korea, both from the United States and from the international community. As for what either side will get out of this, again, I think we have to watch and see what actually comes out of this discussion. Obviously have concerns about any burgeoning defense relationship between North Korea and Russia. Again, it remains to be seen what either side A wants out of this and B will get out of it. These are not two countries that work well with others, and they don't really have all that much trust and confidence in each other. So we'll have to see. But certainly any arrangement that would improve North Korea's military capabilities would be of significant concern to us.
For Putin, the clear challenge that he's facing is a very direct concern about not having enough munitions for the battlefield. And with Kim, he has a partner who has the exact same type of stockpiles that he needs because of the unique Russia-North Korea relationship, and frankly, the Soviet-North Korea relationship. In the case of Kim, he's tried twice now with his space launch vehicle tests. They've both failed at a critical last stage component. And so for their reference to what they need, a military satellite, this is something that there is a precedent. So in August of 2022, the Russians helped Iran put their Kayam satellite into orbit. Overall, the type of cooperation that they gave to each other is unique in international history. If you look at the North Korean nuclear weapons program right now, the original nuclear engineers were trained in Dubna near Moscow. So you see the type of Russian technical assistance and training. And for the older generation of North Korean leaders in the military, the party side, different strata of society, they were educated in Russia. They speak Russian. And so this cultural affinity aspect of it is something that we do have to factor into our analysis as well. So there is this type of mutual respect component that they're tapping into as well right now. But I think that scorecard is important in terms of what each side gets out of this. And it's really for domestic consumption and bolstering their regimes at home.
So even though an arms deal has not been officially announced by Russia or North Korea, it should be noted that Russian President Vladimir Putin has accepted an invitation from Kim Jong-un, this to visit North Korea after the two held their first meet in 4 years. And this is being touted as a rare summit, which the US believes focused on Pyongyang sending arms to help Moscow with its war in Ukraine. Now, the White House has raised concerns about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin meeting for a rare summit in which, according to reports, they discuss military matters, the war in Ukraine, and possible Russian help for the secretive Communist states satellite program. The White House National Security spokesman John Kirby has said at a briefing that US has concerns about any burgeoning defense relationship between North Korea and Russia, and Kim's propaganda apparatus has hailed this meeting, which was held at Russia's Vostochny Cosmodrome Space Center in the Amur region, which is the far east of Russia. The two discussed issues of mutual interest, peace and security in the region, and international justice as well. And at the end of the reception, Kim Jong-un courteously invited Vladimir Putin to visit North Korea at a convenient time. Remember, the war is still on, and Putin has accepted the invitation with pleasure and reaffirmed his will to invariably carry forward the history and tradition of the Russia-North Korea friendship. Also, Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said that North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui might visit Moscow in October, while the US is also keeping a close eye on Russia and North Korea. And Russia's ambassador Anatoly Anatov has made a statement that the United States has no right to lecture US on how to live. In fact, let's also shift focus over to the United States, because much is happening after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced an inquiry on US President Joe Biden. McCarthy's sudden decision to launch an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden appears to have won over even the most reluctant Republicans. Remember, House Speaker McCarthy announced this launch of an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden over his family's business dealings. House Speaker met behind closed doors with Republicans, and it seems he has most Republicans on his side as he is now pushing forward with his impeachment inquiry. Some GOP lawmakers have even pushed for it to move quickly rather than drag into the 2024 presidential elections. Meanwhile, the White House is mobilizing to go on an offensive, calling the GOP's impeachment allegations unfounded and merely bowing to former President Donald Trump. All the while, McCarthy faces turmoil on his right flank as he tries to steer the House to approve government funding, also stave off a federal shutdown. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has said no evidence has been produced by Republicans against Biden as they are now investigating the business dealings of his son, Hunter Biden. And Jean-Pierre said it appears that Kevin McCarthy had ordered the inquiry in response to pressure from far-right Republican lawmakers like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's listen in.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has launched an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. Speaker McCarthy stunned Washington. It was expected, but still surprising when he dropped the news yesterday that he was acting on his own to direct his House committees to start this probe into the president. A number of House Republicans have been reluctant to join in this effort. They want to wait and see and maybe get a little more information about what the president is being accused of. But slowly, surely, McCarthy has brought these Republicans on board. At the Capitol this morning, House Speaker McCarthy met behind closed doors with Republicans, and it seems he has most Republicans on his side as he pushes forward with this impeachment inquiry. The White House is really gearing up for a fight. They mobilize against what they call this unprecedented and unfounded claim against the president. They've put out a long memo this morning, 14 pages, trying to unpack one by one the allegations against the president. It does seem that once the inquiry is launched, what would follow would be articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden. Whether that comes in a matter of weeks or months or even next year, that's what we don't know, and we will see as this investigation proceeds. Of course, even if the House is able to round up the votes to impeach President Biden, the matter would then go to the Senate. It would then be the Senate conducting a trial on the charges, and as we've seen in the past, the Senate has acquitted past presidents of impeachment charges, most recently President Trump, former president who was twice impeached. So there's still a ways to go. It does seem this is moving in that direction after Speaker McCarthy launched the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden.
I've just never heard of a president being impeached because of the actions of a family member. I'm not aware if that's anything that's ever been proposed. And I think Republicans know this to an extent because they're trying to draw connections between what Hunter Biden has done, and certainly he looks like he's in a lot of legal trouble. But they have to establish a connection between Hunter Biden and some kind of near criminal connection. Each stage here involves risks for both parties. Republicans, if they don't come up with more than what they've got, they will face a real choice between pursuing things on the floor of the House when there will be substantial arguments and evidence against them, and maybe it would go down to defeat, and that would look very bad for them. Or they succeed because they work to convince their members of the party that there's sufficient evidence, but then it falls apart in the Senate. There's been a lot of argument over the years over what high crimes and misdemeanors means, but none of the definitions I've ever heard really apply to what President Biden has been shown to have done so far. Of course, something might turn up in a further investigation, and maybe one of the speaker's hopes is that this will give the House additional authority to discover more evidence of wrongdoing than has so far been shown. Some of us are distressed about this because we thought the lesson of the Nixon impeachment that wasn't really adhered to in the Clinton impeachment was that really the level of seriousness of the allegations really has to be at a high level before you go forward. But now it looks like we're involved in a tit-for-tat situation where the parties feel that any effort against a president of their own has to be, in effect, paid back. There has to be payback. And that's a really bad situation for any democracy to be in, because it could obviously just spiral out of control. Every president is going to be subject to impeachment. That's not a good look for us, and it's also a horrible policy distraction.
All right, and more news coming in from the United States. Tech titans, including Elon Musk, Meta Platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai, and other tech CEOs met with lawmakers at Capitol Hill to discuss AI regulation. In fact, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has now called for a US referee for artificial intelligence. More than 60 senators took part in this AI forum. Lawmakers have said that there was universal agreement about the need for government regulation of artificial intelligence. Democrat Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer organized this forum. He said that they got a great start on beginning to deal with one of the most significant issues facing the next generation. Musk has said that there was need for a regulator to ensure the safe use of AI, and according to him, it's important for us to have a referee. He added that a regulator would ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of general public. Musk has said that the meeting was a service to humanity and said it may go down in history as very important to the future of civilization. Interestingly, the Tesla CEO has called AI's double-edged sword during the forum, and Zuckerberg said that Congress should engage with AI to support innovation and safeguards. This is an emerging technology and there are important equities to balance here, and the government is ultimately responsible for that. This is what Musk had to say. He also added that it was better that the standard is set by American companies that can work with the government to shape these models on important issues. Before I bring in my guest today, who is the tech editor at Insider, Tekendra Parmar, let me also play out some reactions on this news story.
We had a diverse group of participants. They talked at each other unvarnished. Everyone learned from everybody else. And so I am really pleased. As some of the people who came out said, it was historic. We got some consensus on some things. First, I asked everyone in the room, is government needed to play a role in regulating AI? And every single person raised their hands, even though they had diverse views. So that gives us a message here that we have to try to act, as difficult as the process may be.
The key point was really that it's important for us to have a referee, just as you have a referee in a sports game, or all sports games, and that the games are better for it to ensure that the players obey the rules, play fairly. I think it is important for similar reasons to have a regulator, which you can think of as a referee, to ensure that companies take actions that are safe and in the interest of the general public.
All right, Tech Features editor of Insider, Tekinder Parmar, joins me live from New York City. Many thanks to you, Tekinder, for joining in. Now, we've heard Sam Altman raise concerns just a few months ago in a testimony to the US Congress. These tech titans also have raised concerns earlier in an open letter too. But what's significant about today's meeting with US lawmakers? Also, what does Elon Musk mean when he says that AI needs a referee?
Right. Thank you so much for having me. So this latest meeting is one of many that have taken part in this past summer on the consequences of AI on American society. One of the first meetings was with Sam Altman, founder of OpenAI, which is one of the biggest AI companies right now. This meeting was with some of the biggest names in the tech industry, from Elon Musk to Bill Gates. And we're seeing some very similar rhetoric come out of it. That means everyone is talking right now about how we can mitigate the harms of artificial intelligence, from misinformation and disinformation to the impact on American jobs. So this is a really important meeting, and one of many important meetings on the subject that has happened over the last summer.
All right, taking a cue from ChatGPT, which we know is based on generative AI, in March, Goldman Sachs warned that AI could replace 300 million jobs, and that's perhaps only one aspect to the repercussions of AI. What are the legal, technological, and ethical questions being posed by the unbridled use of AI?
So, that was in March. That has already taken place. Over the last summer, AI was already one of the largest leading causes of job loss in the United States. So the problems that we are facing with AI have already happened. It's just a matter of fact that we're already behind on the regulations required in order to moderate the impact of artificial intelligence on people. The other large consequences are, we don't know necessarily how artificial intelligence acts. Let me give you an example to sort of illustrate this. For example, if you want to tell one of these modern large language models, I want you to find the quickest route from Brooklyn to Manhattan. It will do that. You will not know how it does that, but it'll eventually grow wings and do that, because the quickest way to get from Brooklyn to Manhattan is to fly. The problem here is not knowing what steps in the evolutionary process of the large language model did it take to get to wings. And when we don't know that, when consequences do arise from artificial intelligence, we don't know how to solve those consequences because we have let those large language models learn independently and act independently of a human pilot.
You know, in other discussions, Tekinder, many tech experts have in fact quoted by saying that the largest conundrum these days is that AI is trying to manipulate your perception of reality. How do you break down that thought when they say it's trying to manipulate your perception of reality?
Look, I don't think AI is trying to manipulate our perception of reality, but I think an over-reliance on artificial intelligence might lead to some negative consequences. For example, if you're relying on ChatGPT, the GPT-3 model that is available to the public right now for large-scale data analysis, you'll see that that model fails, but is very confident in how it gives those responses. That's not to say that in the future, these models will not be able to execute that kind of data analysis to an excellent amount of proficiency. That's just right around the corner. But the problem right now is that these models are very confident in giving out wrong information. So they're not trying to manipulate you. This is just the bug in the system at this point. But where it works really well too.
All right. Take it the last question. In April, the Indian government, however, told Parliament that it was not planning any restrictions on AI, which it described as an engine for economic growth and entrepreneurship, especially for a country like India, which is an economic superpower. Could such, an emerging one at that, but could such complacency by governments the world over prove to be short-sighted?
Definitely. India ignores artificial intelligence regulation at its peril. I want to underscore that point again, so I'll say it again. India ignores artificial regulation at its peril. Some of the greatest concerns of the Indian economy, from the high youth employment rate to the impact on democracy of misinformation and hate speech, artificial intelligence is going to exacerbate that, and it's going to happen at lightning speed. So I have noticed that Indian regulators have been changing their tone, but like I said in the beginning of this conversation, the consequences of artificial intelligence have already been shown in the United States. These conversations about regulation are happening too slow, even though they seem to be happening right alongside the development of these technologies. If India waits any longer, it risks severe consequences.
All right, we leave it at that. Tikendra, many thanks to you for bringing in those precious inputs to CNN News 18 Global.
Thank you for having me.
Now, in some more interesting story, NASA has released its findings from a long-awaited study on unexplained flying objects. The US Space Agency has announced last year that it was reviewing evidence regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, which has now replaced the term UFO. The subject has long fascinated the public, and the study could eventually usher in a new mission for NASA, moving away from debunking sightings to taking them more seriously now. NASA has released a long-awaited report on UFOs. A team of 16 experts who compiled the review said that it is not a review of previous UAP incidents. NASA is to appoint a director for UAP research who will now be talking about using NASA's vast resources to maximize this entire project. Releasing the 33-page report, NASA said that the study of UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, will require new scientific techniques, including advanced satellites, as well as a shift in how unidentified flying objects are being perceived. At the outset, NASA said that at this point there is no reason to conclude that existing unidentified aerial phenomenon reports have an extraterrestrial source. During the release of the report, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said he believes there's other life out there in the universe. And NASA also said it's naming a new director of research into UAPs as an expert panel urged the space agency to increase its efforts to gather information on them. Here's more.
Based on our current findings and methodology, that we find no evidence to suggest that UAP are extraterrestrial in origin. Our focus is on understanding the phenomenon, however, regardless of the source. And previous work from the ARROW has shown that most events are explainable as planes, balloons, drones, weather phenomena, and instrument features.
We, NASA, deal openly, and we will be transparent on this. And we're trying to address the question of there's so much concern that there's something locked up, classified, and that the American government is not being open. Well, we are the American government, and we are open, and we're going to be open about this.
The reasons that we restricted ourselves, this study, to unclassified data is because we can speak openly about it. And in so doing, we're aiming again to alter the discourse from sensationalism to science, as Administrator Nelson beautifully said. NASA personnel, as appropriate, know how to talk to DoD on a classified basis, but the purpose of this study was to tell us what open data we could use in combination with the power of science to move our understanding forward.
In June of last year, NASA commissioned an independent study team to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. We did so with a few goals in mind. First, to examine how NASA can use our expertise and instruments to study UAP from a scientific perspective. Second, shift the conversation about UAP from sensationalism to science. And to make sure that whatever we find or whatever we recommend, to make sure that information is shared transparently. If you ask me, do I believe there's life in a universe that is so vast that it's hard for me to comprehend how big it is? My personal answer is yes. But I asked some of our scientists. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post editorial board asked us to come down to the question, what is the mathematical probability that there is life out there in the universe? And if you calculate in billions of stars, in billions of galaxies, that there's replicated what I just said, another stony planet. The answer was, what's the likelihood? At least 1 trillion. And the top takeaway from the study is that there is a lot more to learn. The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin. But we don't know what these UAP are. That's why I'm announcing that NASA has appointed a NASA Director of UAP Research.